But there's that crazy thing. Hi guys, it's Alan. I'm gonna go and hear the lights better. I think it is. Anyway, hi guys, it's Alan. And looking at that, I didn't even realize I got a haircut. So I don't know if it's good or not. I haven't looked at it really yet. So anyway, just another targeted individual. And we're talking about the targeted individual program. And this for other TIs and for people who aren't TIs, it's going to sound like something that's just too weird to believe. It's like explaining to people, and they made it intentionally this way. They made a program purely by technology that when you try to explain the symptoms of this program, it is meant and designed in a way that when you describe what you're going through, you're going to sound just nutty. Whether it's having muscle spasms, that just a painful zap, and suddenly your muscle just does a spasm. What in everyday language is called hearing voices. We know it as V2K, voice to skull. It's military technology, and they use what they call the Alan Frey microwave auditory effect. And I'm certainly not a scientist, about the farthest away from one. I studied, of all things, just theology, religion, and philosophy. I'm going to put my little hat on. I feel naked. But knowing that this is real, when you're going through this, you know that by giving in, by even trying to warn people, doing what you know to be the right thing, by trying to warn people, if you go out there and do the thing that they ask you to do, even our own people, when people go out there with their phones and take videotapes of you, and then you do the same, and you start reacting about every car. See, another thing is when you're a targeted individual, you get all this stuff, different videos on your computer, tons of videos from different people that are targeted individuals. And the truth of the matter is, we don't know who's real and who isn't. Who's a perp, who's an actual perp or an FBI, and it's like, we're not people who've done anything. Most of us probably, I know I haven't hurt anybody. I didn't deserve any kind of mistreatment or in my entire life, because with synthetic telepathy, with V2K, you can hear these two people, one person or two people. In my case, it's always a guy and a gal, always, every time. And I mean, I can hear them yapping right now. And it doesn't matter, 2 in the morning, 2 in the evening, 6 in the morning, they're waking up, and they'll wake you up sometimes. And just like for some people, they have it different. It's constant. I've had that times 2. Sometimes I've had it just, but it's 24/7. You can always hear it. And the biggest thing is, for a lot of people, is constant interruptions of sleep patterns. And I've had my days with that too, my nights, where it's like you wake up and but other times, maybe other people have had it in that department worse. I've had a lot of what they call directed energy weapons. I mean, since I was 15, 16, broke my arm doing a football practice, went to the hospital in Dallas, Oregon. They fixed it and I thought it was fine. But the next few months, I started getting this side pain, just right here. Not my shoulder is what they worked on. Broke my arm, separated my shoulder. But within a few months, I started getting this sharp double over, just a sharp, like it feels like what you imagine a heart attack to feel like. And it just hurts. and then you double over in pain, and then it lasts for a few minutes, and then over. But then it happens again a few hours later, and then the next day, and then a couple days later, the same thing. And it happens like that for every week, for months, and for years. And you go to the doctor, and your doctor sends you to a specialist or gives you pain medicine, which I'm thankful for my doctor. They did what they're supposed to do, sent me to a specialist, and if they could cure it, great. But if they couldn't, then at least pain medicine. And I didn't know what it was. I just thought there's an undiagnosed pain. Doctors are extremely smart, but they don't know everything. They don't know what every cause is or why this is happening, but at least they try to. And at that time, I certainly didn't have an anti-government or think the government or my doctors or my town was trying to kill me or torture me, or I was part of a government torture program. I thought everybody was pretty decent people. It was a nice little conservative religious town. Lots of Mennonites, lots of evangelicals, a Catholic, and even if people are humanist or liberal, they're welcome too. It's not like I didn't find it to be a very bigoted or hateful, very capitalistic, but still the religion had played such a huge part in the community. Very conservative, lots of religion, and it's always there. I mean, not like an Amish community, but it's, tons of churches. And that's why it was so surprising to me. I remember even waking up in the hospital where I'd fallen out of a window because of this program, and I had to learn to walk again, because of this program. They piped in sounds, and again, this is where a part of the weird stuff. They pipe in sounds through your floorboards, or just what sounds like next door or underneath your floorboards. So if you have a garage or underneath you or an upstairs neighbor in an apartment, then they make it sound like it's neighbors creating all this racket. And then it's like, well, why doesn't so-and-so, in my case, me, Alan, why doesn't Alan come down here? He knows we're talking about him. But I knew I didn't own the garage downstairs. It's a garage, but it belonged to the neighbors. And so I knew if I did that, that would have been breaking and entering. And you don't know what's going on when you're going through this program. You just know somebody's fucking with you. But you don't, forgive people if they don't like the F word, but this really F's with you. And you don't know what it is. And you certainly, when it's a religious town, conservative, you just don't think, and you don't have any enemies. In my case, I knew in my life I had never knowingly or intentionally done anything wrong to her. I never did. I had never hurt anybody. I just never did. I didn't gossip. I didn't go online. I didn't talk shit about people. I didn't spread gossip. And nobody likes a big, look at me, I'm such a goody. Nobody likes those people who are so bragging about if they're so good but I didn't do that either. I was very quiet. I just didn't hurt people. It's not like I went and volunteered my time to help the orphans either. I wasn't that much of a do-gooder, but I worked and I was always nice, but I never hurt anybody, ever. In my memory with this synthetic, and they know it, with synthetic telepathy, you can hear the B2K folks saying, shit, this is just wrong. This is wrong. And they know it. But a lot of people think, in some cases, it might be revenge from the city official, but in a lot of cases, it's just, in my case, I'm convinced, just human experimentation. They probably got a federal grant, just like they've always done, like Bill Clinton admitted that our government used to experiment on our own people. Didn't ask for consent. They just did it. And it was in 1995, Bill Clinton apologized to using people for radiation experimentation. And so you think, okay, they admitted it. All those people who've been complaining about it, the government's out to get me, they were telling the truth. I mean, there might be some people that are a little bit nutty or a little bit mentally, but a lot of them were telling the truth and they weren't believed. And it took the 70s Church Commission. It's not a religious thing. It's when they're looking at MK Ultra. And the government then even tried to cover it up. One of the main people in the FBI or CIA, I believe it was, but they were trying to burn the paperwork. But he didn't get to burn all the paperwork. And some of the paperwork for the MK Ultra project, again, torturing people with drugs, giving it to prostitutes to give to their johns to see just the effects of what LSD would do to their johns. And they were just they did it to sometimes their own people. One guy who worked for the FBI jumped out of a window and died. They just dosed him and he didn't know what was happening. And next thing you know, they gave him a lift they brought him from New York, and the poor guy jumped out of a window and died. And it's not like they feel shame or guilt, even when they're caught. I mean, the normal, moral, traditional family values of our small town, you think that would be enough of a safety guard that there's some bad people, but you don't think that you would think that somebody, whether they're religious or even secular humanists, would say, common sense, this is so wrong and it's not worth the money. This will damage our reputation. It'll damage everything that we're trying to be known for. But greed overtakes them. It's just plain greed. They just have so much greed. And the federal government says, don't worry, we'll cover it up. Don't worry, it won't get back to you. And then the police and the sheriffs are like, don't worry, we can do this. We'll just call them crazy. We'll just call the person nuts. And then they start doing this program, and you start hearing the voices, voice to skull. Just look that up. It's a real thing. The military had it on, I think it was Wired magazine. Wired magazine was talking about how the military had pulled V2K from its online website. So if you put in Wired magazine V2K, it'll show it. And what it is that they take these two different, I think it's 2 or 3 different frequencies. Like you think of wireless, like phones, wireless technology. They can take 2 or 3 wireless different frequencies, and on their own, they won't do it. They won't create the sound. But when you put them together and somehow they're able to aim it towards a noggin, towards it, like a phone calling another phone. They can aim it, and you have a receiver. If you have a receiver, then suddenly you can hear sound. And that's the debate, whether they can use the skull or the brain as its own receiver, or if there's a technological chip. That is a debate in the TI community, because it's not like our own government is coming forth with the truth about this stuff. They're trying to cover it up. Some of the stuff does get through, like Robert Duncan. Dr. Robert Duncan is one of the doctors or scientists that worked on this stuff, helped create it. But all these different parts of this program are compartmentalized. So each of these scientists that are working on a part, but they don't know the details until it's all put together. But the truth of the matter is, if you're liberal, and I have my liberal parts to me, definitely. But the idea that there's enough good people in the world, even if you believe in Christianity or Judaism, Islam, whatever, if you believe that there's so many good people, well, there's good people. Somebody would tell. Somebody would warn us. The British are coming. The British are coming. And then you realize, well, what do we know about our intelligence? First of all, they can screw up royally. You can have 16 different intelligence services of the United States, the most technologically advanced nation in the world, as a superpower, and They got weapons of mass destruction. Totally. They just covered it up. And even when Scott Ritter, the UN weapons inspector, tried to tell them, no, there is no weapons of mass destruction, none of them listened to reason. None of them wanted to hear what he had to say. So instead, they just try to ruin his reputation or something like that. But this man tried to explain, and David Kay, another UN's weapons inspector that George Bush, to his credit, sent there, and he admitted, no, we couldn't find anything. We couldn't find it. It's not there. And to their credit, they didn't cover him up. They allowed him to say the truth. We couldn't find anything. But this, they didn't hush him up. Or at least he stood his ground and said, no, there are none. We tried to find it, and there are none of these weapons that we were told was going to be there. They don't exist. Anyway, this is our weapons. These are our intelligence, and they are smart. They're smarter than me 1,000 times. I can't fix a car. I mean, a lot of things. I can't figure out my phone. So they're smarter than me, but I don't think it's an issue of their smarts. I just think it's an issue of their honesty. I mean, when you take a look at the people listening in to us, the NSA, there are thousands, tens of thousands of people working, but there's only two names that really come through that have warned us, the people, and that's Edward Snowden and the one that Chelsea Manning. There's only two people out of the tens of thousands of people that work for the NSA. You would think a lot more people would warn the American people, would warn their moms, warn their dads, warn all their cousins, no. They sign non-disclosures, they get paid lots of money, and they don't warn. It's kind of like when they had this crazy COVID in January of 2020. Trump knew about it. The president of Z from China was here visiting, and they had this big meeting, and they were told this is airborne. It was in the two guys that brought down Nixon, Watergate. They wrote a book, or at least Woodstein, anyway, you know what I'm talking about. And they had this meeting with Fauci or Trump, and they were warned, this is airborne and this is a killer. But none of the people in the Senate, Congress, House of Reps, none of them went to Twitter and warned anybody. None of them. They just went to their stock market. They went to the brokers and the stocks, and they traded stocks and became personally wealthy. Whether they signed a bunch of non-disclosures and threats, but if it means screwing their entire town of constituents, the people who they claim to, they love them, they will kiss their babies, vote for me, I love you, I'll represent you, and all this. It's like cinema. She made all these promises to the people in Arizona, and now she's just an embarrassment to the people that put her there. I mean, it's just like the Republicans love her because she helps do the bidding. I mean, it's just like she's a Democrat, and I don't care if a person's Republican or Democrat. I just think both sides, they're both equally, they're just corrupt. They will have people that will say they were for the war entirely, and then they'll change their mind. I was never for the war. And then there's just not honesty at all at that level. They're just going to financially profit off of it. Right now, Pete Buttigieg is on the news because he's the transportation guy. And they're making fun of all this stuff. It's like they put Rick Perry, those three things that he wanted to get rid of, and he forgot one of them. And then Trump puts him in charge of the one he forgot. I mean, they're just making a laugh, a mockery out of their job because nobody will take it from them. And the military will defend the government more than anything because if told to, they will shoot their own people. This technology, V2K, all this stuff was actually first invented for LRADs. The Navy had something called Medusa, Mob Excess Deterrent, a deterrent for mobs. using silent audio. Now, audio is not silent, but in this case, they made a technology to where mob excess. So if there's a mob of people, mob excess deterrent. So stop a mob or just, disperse a mob, break it up quick using silent audio. So they can use these lasers or technology, vibrations and whatever, microwave beams, call it whatever, to break up with sounds that people can't hear, but they can still, in a way, hear. It's not, the person can hear it, but the person next to them. And when you have V2K, you understand exactly what you mean. And there's no doubt that it's real when you're experiencing it. It's not the Lord, it's not God, it's not spirits. It's just two people probably at the fusion center. And they're speaking out. And what happens is that we can get to these. I went to the Ella Free thing in Portland. That was wonderful. It's the first time I actually met another target individual. And I had this thing in my side since I was 15. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know it was a directed energy weapon or I was just a guinea pig. I just knew I was in pain all the time. And but next thing you know, well, I shouldn't say next thing you know, it was 30, 35 years. When I was about 5-6 years ago, then the people holding up their phones, taking videos, acting weird, and then saying stuff like they know about my personal conversations or just thoughts. And then you have no idea what's going on. You just know things are acting very strange and you don't want to overreact because you're just trying to figure out what's going on. And then a few months later, then for the first time in my life, I was like going out for a cigarette and I could hear the shutter of what sounded like a camera. I go out for a smoke in the back of my house, backyard, and I could hear this click, 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 click going on every minute, and people just reacting weird and looking and then saying something. And then you're trying to, well, it's probably just nothing, probably just nothing, probably just nothing. And then they start ramping it up even more. A good person who explained this very well was on YouTube, and his name was Myron May. Now, he later went on and did something horrible. And it was horrible. He did it for a good reason in that he wanted to bring awareness. But the thing is, now there's people, he went and shot some innocent students at Florida State. And I think one's paralyzed. So it's always wrong to hurt other innocent people. It just is. I mean, even when you want to get a message across, that teenager will probably never be the same. So we never want to encourage it, but I can understand the anger. I think anybody can understand when you haven't done anything to hurt anybody ever. And then suddenly the town that you were raised in and were led to, even if you don't know them, you're raised to believe, oh, they're good people. And you try to live your life to where you don't hurt people. And suddenly out of the blue, you realize that they're trying to kill you. They're trying to get you to kill yourself. And as crazy as that sounds, I mean, like Dallas is a very religious, pro-life, conservative, drain the swamp town. And the idea of in 2016, when Trump's getting elected and everybody's saying, drain the swamp. And most police and sheriffs are conservative by nature. They're just law and order, and Republicans are more vocal about being for law and order and defending police, and CNN is more about defending and believing whether minorities, black people, but I mean, let's just be honest. Sometimes there's just some bad cops that shoot or make mistakes, and they get covered up for. And sometimes some innocent black people or brown people or white people get shot, and nobody does any digging. But other times, sometimes it's just. Sometimes sometimes police are innocent and they don't deserve it. But it's not a black and white thing as far as it shouldn't even use that phrase. It's not a good or bad. So the phrase black and white, like good and bad, it's not a healthy thing to say it that way because it has racial overtones. But the fact of the matter is, these good people who are, whether Republican or Democrat, suddenly who are chanting "Drain the swamp" one day and are trying to do these little behaviors to try to get you to kill yourself the next. In my case, I actually fell out a window and had to learn to walk again. And in all those years, 5-6 years since, not one person from City Hall came to admit it, that they knew about it, or to apologize. I just had to learn slowly, walking to work, learning to walk, and just stepping slowly. And sometimes there's a couple times where a car out of the blue would try to run me over, and I'd just try to get out of the way. But nobody tried to warn or tell what's going on. And just thank God for the internet, because this is happening to a lot of other people. And when you realize, and you realize the people of your own town are doing this to you, and you're trying to think, well, why? What did I do? I didn't hurt anybody. And you're trying to think your whole life, have you hurt anybody to anything? And in my case, no. I didn't, date some lady that was, married at the time, or one was going through a divorce, and separated, but that's it. One was separated and going through a divorce, and she asked me out. Big whoop. But it wasn't like anything. I just never done anything that would have done something to make it that deserved. I just never hurt anybody. Ever. There was nothing to justify. If there was something, I would have been the first one to say, hey, I'm sorry about, if somebody would have brought it to I just would have. Try to see their side to it. So it's kind of like, a lot of people think, well, maybe I did something, and they're trying to find the reason, and they're trying to use that person's religious beliefs, whether Jewish, Christian, Muslim, even atheist, or if they believe in aliens, or whatever that person believes, use those beliefs against the person and say, don't you want to go to heaven, or don't you want to do, please. It's just always using that person's religion to try to create guilt to where they'll off themselves. Because I don't know, but that's the theory, is that there's probably what is known as stolies, stranger-owned life insurance, stranger-owned life insurance policies, where complete strangers can go online and buy life insurance for complete strangers, and then get a little bit of information about this complete stranger, and then when the person dies, then collect. And they could have multiple policies. There's a couple people, SHP, where she kind of goes in depth to describe how a person can trace the computer hacking and all that to who, or what group, or what university, what schools, what companies or businesses. So if interested, maybe look up SHP on YouTube. She's very technologically just smart. So Stoli, or dead, it's also known as dead peasants life insurance. When you're just in their view, because they're at City Hall and you're just a normal everyday worker, you're just, to them, a peasant who should be dead, and they can collect life insurance. Dead peasants life insurance. And yes, it does happen, because it happened to me, and it's still happening on a daily basis. And 35 years of direct energy weapons hitting me still right here. At least, thankfully, the one thing I'm really glad is it's like when you, based on your beliefs, if you believe in God or gods, or, you kind of want to have a time where, boy, I'd like to ask God why I'm in pain all this time. And that was my thing from my side. Why everybody thinks they're going to have a sit down or a one-on-one. And me too. I had the same thing. Like, why was I in pain on my side all these years? Nobody could figure it out. Nobody treated it. And it wasn't until I started getting V2K, and I realized people with V2K are called you just know them as voices at that time. But then you realize, oh, this has got a name. It's V, voice to skull. And I don't know what the K stands for. People say that K stands for skull, but I don't know. But the fact of the matter is that this is still going on. And 80 to 90, I don't know the percentage, but a huge percentage of people with V2K, targeted individuals, also are affected by direct energy weapons, or what the news called Havana syndrome. And that's where these people in the CIA are, and only American diplomats. One or two Canadians got in there too, and the Americans wanted to blame it on Russia or China because it happened in different parts of the world and only to Americans. The problem is this targeted individual program is happening to innocent people in different parts all over the world, but there's so many of us that they have to blame it on some other country. We know our own country, it's our own universities, MIT, Stanford, that the computer and the technological advances in chemistry, biology, neurology, technology, and they're trying to have some programs where they mold it together. Now they can call it transhumanism, blame it on Satanists like QAnon, and all we know is they're capitalists. They're just capitalists that want a bunch of money and like technology, and they're using Washington, D.C. to give out federal programs worth millions of dollars, and that little towns like Dallas or big cities like Salem get some of that money to torture innocent people. And the people who are taking that money are just normal, everyday, conservative, religious Christians. They're not Satanists. They're not QAnon, or that some may be, but they're just people, capitalists. And in my case in Dallas, a lot of them are just conservative, religious people. Some might be not religious at all, but they're just capitalists. And if it means torturing innocent people, complete strangers maybe, or maybe even well-known. It's like Myron May was a lawyer in New Mexico, and they did it to him. And I would encourage anybody to look up his YouTube videos. Myron May was the Florida State shooter. But he did 3 videos because he wanted to bring attention to the targeted individual program. Even the White House in 2011 and 2012 opened up just out of pressure. They called it the Bioethics Symposium. Barack Obama had started the bioethics meetings. I don't know if he started them, but in 2011 and 2012, a bunch of targeted individuals went to him, being used as guinea pigs, being experimented on. And a bunch of them went there hoping to bring awareness and hoping somebody would listen to them for a change. So it could be. Just wanted to listen to them for a change and hopefully that they would stop it. Well, that was in 2011. And you can look this up online on 2012 targeted individual evidence. The thing is, when you're a targeted individual, the handlers who can listen to me right now, they are very good and experts at technology. They can play with your mouse, they can play with your television, the electronics, the digital, however your house is connected or your internet is connected, your Xbox, your lights, they can mess with it. Your car. They are very smart, brilliant people. And I don't want to do anything to piss them off either, but the truth of the matter is I still want to I want to bring awareness so that people can know about this. And if it does, I know what I went through, 35 years of this. And I'm a little bit thankful because I went through 35 years of, and I still am, with my side. But at least for the first time, I got to figure out what caused it. It's direct energy weapons and the Havana syndrome in my own life. I'm no diplomat, but it's just the Havana syndrome. It's microwave weapons. And no, it's not crickets. I don't care if it's Fox News, Tucker Carlson, and I like him. And I watch him, and I watch CNN sometimes, the Young Turks, the Debate Me channel, but liberal and conservative. But this is not crickets, folks. All these CIA and FBI people, they've all heard crickets before. And if crickets could do this to people, causing this type of damage, this would have been all over the internet. People would have known about this for thousands of years. But it's for whatever reason, it's what they're using as an excuse for Havana syndrome. It's almost like the government wanted to throw something out there, but if it didn't work the way they wanted to, they could pull it back and blame it on crickets, which is what they said in 2017, 2018. They kind of covered it up. They just acted like it was a mystery. They didn't know what it was. I mean, target individuals the whole time knew what it was. It was microwave weapons being used on the public. But now it's being, they're using allegedly on diplomats, and it's just like, and blame it on China or Russia. And it's like, it makes you wonder how much of this vaccine and pandemic, my own personal belief, and I could be wrong, but I think I'm right, is I do believe, because I know that our own government can and is doing this to us, that, yeah, they will try to kill their own people. They will torture. Each country will torture and kill thousands of their own people in their own towns and big cities that have never hurt anybody, and get away with it and try to get away with it. And if there's any pressure, make up a story and blame it on another country. And we know that's being done with the targeted individual program and the Havana syndrome. Whether the United States and China are going along with Echo Labs and the National Institutes of Health, going along, giving the money to Wuhan lab and going in and then acting like, oh, well, they didn't know and they didn't know about this. Well, I do know Dr. Fauci's wife, Dr. Christine Grady, was one of the people in charge of looking into the 2011 and 2012 targeted individual program. Dr. Christine Grady. And you can see it on there, or you can see it on James Lyko. Again, this is stuff I can see on it comes up on the what's next. And I can look it up, but I don't know if they only allow some targeted individuals to see some sites, some websites, but they cover it up for other people. It's like North Korea covers up. They only have like 30 or 36 channels that are state run. The entire internet's out there, but I think North Korea is not allowed. They just took off the rest of the internet so that the people can't see it unless they're hackers. They can see it maybe, but the everyday people who think that they're looking at the internet in North Korea don't realize they're only watching state-sponsored. And when you're a targeted individual, they kind of leave you in the dark. You're able to look up stuff, but we don't know, and they're messing with our computers and technology all the time. We don't know how much of our stuff, like the videos I'm putting out right now, if other people can see them, and they instantly put up 20 views or 30 views, and then, it might be that's the only people that can see it, or maybe they just make up 20 or 30 views, and then they make up comments that nobody's actually writing. They just have bots that do it, or people at the Fusion Center. We don't know. We don't know. But there's enough of us, and there's enough somewhat of awareness to have PAX International, Freedom from Covert Harassment, Ella Free, targeted in Massachusetts, Internet, ICAT, ICATOR, different groups, PAX International. There's some Dr. Catherine Horton. just a lot of different groups that this is happening to. Anyway, that's what I wanted to wanted to say, and hopefully I'll be able to have more to talk about later. So, all right, you guys have a good night. Bye. Alan.